Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the ESP32 product creation journey. On today's stream, we're going to talk about rendering the display, how I do that server side, and how I think, improved that, and some of the things that go into the tech behind that. But before we get into that, I've got some notes and some things to cover here. I'm going to put this at the very beginning of the video. If you comment on one of my videos, thank you so much. First of all. Second of all, something that I'm seeing a lot lately is I get an email whenever somebody comments on this on YouTube, and I can't get to it right away. And there seems to be some sort of like social pressure or anxiety that, like, if I don't respond within a half an hour or an hour, people delete their comments. And I don't know if that's because they get worried that it was a dumb question or something like that. And so I'm asking, please, if you comment, don't delete the comment because I don't answer it in an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Sometimes it takes me a day, 2 days, depending on stuff that's going on in my life and juggling all the things that I'm juggling. So don't ever assume that because I haven't responded right away that it's because your comment is stupid or it's a dumb question, and then delete it. Because I've had lots of comments deleted that I think were great questions that would benefit the rest of the community, but I can't reply to them because when I finally get around to replying to them, the original poster of that comment has deleted it. And so I'm not sure what that is and why people do that, but I'm asking you, please, if you comment, thank you so much. Please don't delete it. Okay. Let's talk about fixing the display crispness, sharpness. Let's go to this view. Okay, so one of the things that I'm working on, and I apologize, the overhead of this is probably not going to work super well, but this is the puck, which customers have these, still using these. Everything is drawn device side on the pucks. And so I send stat data down to the puck, and then it draws this display with that data locally, meaning it's LVGL is the library that I use for that, and it does all of the drawing device side. And it has so it has the font built in, and it's really nice and crisp. Everything is it's what I call pixel perfect. And it looks great. The problem is on short notice, I can't change this display at all. Because again, that would require a firmware update. So one of the changes that I made with the puck holder is it draws everything server side, sends data down, and basically just throws all of that data onto the screen to display. And it looks the same, but again, it's drawn on the server side, not rendered on the device. And that way I can do things like change what's displayed very quickly. Like I have I had like a countdown to the season, and then when the season started, it switched to this view here. During the Olympic break, I could display something else, none of which would require a firmware update, just a back-end server update to send data. Now, something that you're not going to be able to see really well is that this font, you can kind of see it there, like the L and the A in last. It's not going to focus up close. They run together. Some of the letters, like the M, let's see, right here, the M's aren't uniform, meaning the left leg of the M is fatter than the right leg. Actually, if I shadow it like that, you can kind of see. And there's a couple of things. It's readable, but it's not great. And what the overhead view is not showing is that this is the new version of that, which looks much better, in my opinion, and in the opinions of others. And I'll show you how we got to that later on. But I want to talk about some of the tech behind doing that, because I think it's interesting. So let's switch views here. Okay. Here is where I'm testing some of this new stuff on the server side. And I'm using the Canvas library from Node, from the NPM package repository. And I was playing with all of these settings to try and find out how to get the best version of this as possible. And you can see here, like, I know it makes You can't see because my head is in the way. Let me find. Oh, you're not gonna be able to see last, and I. Let's see if I can I'll just move this. Come on. Here. Are we gonna see it? Yeah, right there. Yep, you can kind of just barely see it right there next to my head. So there is a clear space here. There's just little things like this where the more pixel perfect I can make the display, the better it will look. And it's just very small tweaks like that that I feel like make a difference in the end user experience. But and so how I was doing this originally, let me show you how I was doing it originally. This is all new stuff right here. I'm going to comment this out because this anti-aliasing is something I want to talk about. This image smoothing enabled didn't do anything. Pattern quality best, text drawing mode path. None of those did anything. I'll get rid of those. But this is how I was originally drawing it. I was drawing it with no anti-alias setting. But I was doing... Where was it? Oh, there was another setting that I feel like I was using. But I'm gonna update on my ZSH first. And then let's npm run dev this. And then let's grab Thunder Client and do this. Okay, so it should hit localhost display app. No, I didn't do that right. We have to force the display. I think it's display app equals, I can't remember what I call it. Stand by. This will just take a second. Font fix, yeah, is how I was messing with it. Display app equals font fix. This is on just a feature branch. npm run dev. Okay, let's try that. Okay, and then to test this, I don't have to have the device hit it. I can just use the Thunder client here and hit send, and it should, as part of the code here, which I will save. Oh, save. I'm writing it out to an image that I have over here, and I'll explain why it's sideways in just a second. But let's come back over here to this Thunder client tab and hit send, and it should redraw this. Let's see if that... Oh, I got to start Mongo. Docker container start Mongo. Okay. Let's run this again. There we go. Okay. If you're paying attention, you might need to full screen this and look. Everything just got anti-aliased, meaning it kind of smoothed out the edges there. Which, when you're rendering in a web context, is helpful and makes things look better. When you're rendering on a screen, that causes problems because on the screens right here, there is no grayscale. The pixel is either on or the pixel is off. And so there's no in between there. And so when I go to render this data, before I even send it down to the device, I need to decide is, I think I can zoom in on this. Yeah, I can. Like I come in here. Oops, let's scroll around. And you'll see, let's come in even further. You'll see I've got varying degrees of gray and black and white. Like there's this shade right here. This is a little darker. This looks like clear black. And then you have this very light shade here, but this darker one here. So when we go to draw this, do we make these pixels on and this gray pixel on and not this one over here? And so what I ended up doing in my code, which I can kind of show, I guess, is right here. I go through the entire display and I average out the RGB value and decide, like, is it closer to black or white? And I've messed around with thresholds and grayscale averages and stuff and decide, like, in this case, I believe this is 4 total pixels. Like this is a pixel, this row, and then there's 2 black rows here, and then there's this other gray row. Like, do I draw this eye as 4 pixels wide and however many pixels tall, or do I draw just these two, or do I draw these two and this one? Figuring that all out. And so anti-aliasing kind of kills me. The other problem that I was running into when trying to test this is, if I scroll back out here, is quality. Quality 1 down here when I save the image. This doesn't affect the data that I send to the device, but let's change it to, I believe it defaults to 0.8. So I'm going to change it to that, save it, restart, and I want you to see what happens. So rerun this, and I have lost the time because I've got it right up here above me. Okay, we got time. Okay, and now I'm going to run this again. And you'll see, if we zoom in, we got a whole bunch of artifacts here around. Hopefully this comes through, but like you've got all these dots around here, which makes it look weird. And that's the image saving with not full quality. So if you're doing this and you're testing and you want to see exactly what image data is being generated, you need to change, again, over here. When you're saving it, this canvas.2 buffer, and I'm saving it to a JPEG, you need to pass the option to make the quality 1. So it'll save it with max quality. So that was something that I learned. And so now let's come back over here. I'll zoom in and we'll run it again, and you should see all of those things disappear. And see, it all cleans up. So that was just something for while I was going through and looking at this, made everything look more like it would render on the actual display. So after playing around with this a ton, where I ended up figuring out how to get a better display was to come into this context anti-alias option and set it to none. So I'm going to uncomment that, and I'll show you what that does. So again, remember, you've got how it smooths it out, looks great on monitors and in web browsers, makes it really tough to render on an e-paper display. And so let's change that out. And we'll run it again. Now, at first you're like, ooh, it looks kind of like rough now. And you're right, but this gives you a much better idea of how it's actually going to render on the device. And now I'm just now noticing, it's like small things like this that drive me crazy. I don't know if you'll be able to, right there. This extra pixel on the 3 down here. I'm going to try and see if that actually exists. Yeah, sure enough, it does. On the display here. Now, you can't, let's see if we switch here. You're definitely probably not going to be able to see it on here. I'm going to try something crazy. Stand by. Okay, I have no idea if this is going to work. Oh, that's weird. Like, it doesn't change the magnification of the display at all. That's weird. Okay, well, anyway, I'm trying to... Well, yeah, okay, that's not going to work. Hey, I tried. When you're looking at it like this, at an arm's distance, you cannot see that pixel. But if you look very closely with a magnifying glass, you can. And so things like that aren't as bad where it's just a single pixel. But when you get multiple pixels not aligning or letters drawing differently, it's distracting and it makes it harder. The display it's hard to explain. The display is readable, but there's something like that your eyes tell your brain is like a little off. Like it just seems a little off, like not as good. And so I've been working on fixing that. And where I ended up was what you see here, which actually looks really good on the displays. But to do that, you can kind of see, where was it? right here, my font fix app that I was testing, like I was going through all kinds of fonts to see what looks the best. And some of these look amazing in a web browser, but look awful once you render them onto an e-paper display. And so not only that, the font size makes a difference with how the anti-aliasing will draw them. And so one pixel off here or there, and it goes from looking nice and crisp to not so good. And so this was hours and hours and hours of time that I put in to finding that 21 pixel font here, the 21 pixel, what is it, Arial font looks really crisp and nice. But when I was using the Pixel Font 7 or the Time Burner font or the ticketing font, like that size had to change to get that real crisp display. And so just an example of like, who would have thought I would have spent, 5 hours trying dozens of fonts and font sizes to try and figure out what what made the display look best. Now, the other thing that I found as part of this, let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I do want to talk. We'll come back to that in a second. The other thing I want to talk about, which I mentioned when I gave sort of the post-mortem of when the service went down, is when you don't specify. No, not that. I've always, in the actual app that displays for puck holders, the font is specified as Arial. The problem is Arial is a font that's available on the render images that run in my hosting service. But when I switched the service over to Heroku during that outage period, Arial is not installed. And when Arial's not installed, it defaults it to like a sans serif font. And so it changes depending on the hosting service. If you don't have the font there, it's going to fall back to a default, which is bad because now you're going to get, if you have to fail over, you're going to get a different customer experience on one service to the next. And so part of the way I'm fixing that is registering the font always, even if it's, right now I'm doing Arial up here because my machine has it. But once I push this change up to production, I will register the Arial font, even though on render it's already installed on the machine. But this makes sure that it's available on render as well as on Heroku. And so don't assume that the font is available in the production environment that you're running in if you're going to be using Canvas to do this sort of like server-side drawing of displays. And so, yeah, anyway, font differences between the two. The last thing that I want to cover today, how long are we in here? 17 minutes in? Yeah. The last thing that I want to go over is customer feedback. And this is really hard when you're first getting started and you don't have a lot of customers. But you can see after all the fonts that I went through, I came down to Pixel Font 7, Time Burner, and ticketing I got rid of. But Pixel Font 7, I was really into personally. Let's see if I can show you that real quick. Where are we? Change word. Pixel Font 7. Okay. And let's run that again. Okay. I'm not going to reposition everything. So you can see some fonts display with like a different line height and things like that. And so it gets all scrunched up. This is easily fixed by, again, changing the font size, changing the margin between the fonts. But I was looking at the Arial font and I was like, I don't know if I like it or not. And then this really kind of threw me back to like Nintendo days. I'm a child of the 80s. Nintendo, I just fixed my Game Boy. Like I've been playing that. And so like this font really kind of called out to me as like the old 8-bit sort of look. And I thought it looked great. I'm like, I think it looks really cool. Again, when properly spaced, not how you see it here. And so I was ready to make the change, but then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just at least ask a few people to see if I can get some feedback. Again, I don't have a lot of customers, and I don't want to spam. And this is sort of this weird area. When you don't have a lot, I don't want to spam them. I don't want to be the company that's like, hey, take a minute as a customer to help us out. And like, okay, blocked, unsubscribe. So I didn't reach out to the few customers that I have. I decided, I'll post it on social media. and see what people say. And it was a really interesting lesson. And I will bring, let's see how we can get this, of where I thought I would find feedback and where I actually ended up finding feedback. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit. So I used Canva. I talked about this in a previous episode, how Canva really is nice because you can take one post and resize it and reformat it perfectly for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I did decide, I'm not saying this is a full endorsement of it. I like it enough. I've put enough time into learning how it works that I have gotten a subscription to it because I feel like it saves me a ton of time when creating stuff for social. And sorry, let me LinkedIn / I don't know my. Nope, that's not right. Sorry, I'm trying to show you the post that I made. Doesn't like that. It's probably not going to let me do anything unless I'm signed in. Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, just take me a second to find. Okay. All right, let me bring this over. Okay. I put this exact same image on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And just ask people. Take 10 seconds, look at these 3 displays. These are the 3 that I had narrowed it down to that I thought looked the best. And said, which one do you think looks best? And I expected to get the most feedback from Facebook, just because that's where I feel like I tend to get the most organic reach on things. I posted it, as you can see here, as 12D Sports, as well as myself. Like I posted it as the company, and then I reshared it on all of my personal versions of those platforms to say, hey, can you take a second to look at this? And I was blown away when the LinkedIn engagement on this, off the charts for me. Again, given like my following and connections and things like that, you can see I've got 52 comments on it. And there's another page that'll show me like it's gotten over like 1,000 impressions, however LinkedIn defines that. But at first, I didn't even think to put it on. I was like, I'll just put it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But then I was like, no, might as well throw it on all of them. And LinkedIn got way more response. And so it was a lesson to me of like, put it everywhere because you never know. And I don't want to say you never know. I'm still learning where I'm going to get the most engagement on what kind of posts. And so this sort of like pick one, LinkedIn way overperformed than all of the other ones. And part of that, I think, is how LinkedIn organically helps the reach on that. And Twitter, it's a waterfall. Like as soon as it's in somebody's feed, it's gone in some cases 5 seconds later. And so you have to constantly retweet. Facebook, the algorithm, again, is going to bury you quickly. LinkedIn's algorithm and I apparently are friends because I got lots of feedback. And again, I told you, let's see, hopefully that's big enough. These were the 3. I was sort of favoring this one just because, again, of that old school look that it had. And I got, again, 50, well, not 52 people. A lot of those are me responding to people, but I would say I got close to 36 responses across all channels, most of them on LinkedIn. And not even close, people liked number 3. Like the original aerial that is on the device now, but I did it, like I said, the anti-aliasing to make it a little more crisp. Right here, you can kind of see the space between the L and the A, small things like that make it look better. And so I was about to make a change to this font because I like it and I think it's cool when the overwhelming majority said 3. I think I had 1 vote for 2 and I think 3 votes for 1, but the other several dozen were for 3. And so that was a great reminder of like, just because I like it doesn't mean they're going to like it. And you have to balance that, right? Like, I don't know I like the puck holder as an idea, and I need to see how people like that. But as far as like choosing a font, my tastes are not everybody else's tastes, and so I'm going to leave it as Arial. We're going to go with 3. The people have spoken, and I have listened. So anyway, that was a cool. Like I said, the outcome was different than it would have happened if I made the decision in a vacuum. And so just things to remember that even though you like something or think something's cool or a good idea, reach out and get feedback. And it's a continual process of improvement. And so let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to mention while we're on here? No, I think that's it. So just change this back to Arial before I forget. Just like I said, wanted to cover this idea of trying to make the displays look a little nicer and the process that I went through to do that. So I think that's going to do it for today. Thorax, I am so sorry I didn't notice you in the comments here. I'm bad at looking at the comments. Choose a few font options. Okay, Thorax, for those that watching this later, asks, have you thought about letting customers choose between a few font options, or would that be too complicated to implement? Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. Because again, I had a few people that are like, I just really like the one that nobody else likes. And so right now I'm playing to the masses, right? Like most people like the Arial font, and so I'm going to go with that. But I think it would be awesome to have an interface at some point, whether that's through the app, the phone app that I have. I keep dumping everything into the phone app. Like I say, like time zone's going to be set in the phone app. Like the phone app is going to get to a point where I hope it can do everything I need it to do, but I don't have the time to work on that right now. But I think it would be awesome to, inside the app, choose from a few fonts that I vetted that I know look good. Like I won't make it so you can choose any font, because again, even though you like a font, it might not render well on the e-paper display. And so, yeah, definitely something that I've thought about and is actually on the backlog down the road. I would love for people to be able to choose what font. And that's another major benefit of doing all this rendering server side. Fonts take up precious space on the actual device. In some cases, several dozen kilobytes of flash. And so when I do this server side, I don't have to worry about that space at all. Like I can use as exotic a font as I can find. It could be huge. I can just render that server side, and then I'm just sending the data down to the display. And so that's another reason actually why I went with this whole server side approach, so that when things like this come up and I need to make a font change, it's very simple to do. And so, yes, thanks, Thorax, for asking. That was a great question. All right, I think we're going to wrap up there. A little bit of a shorter stream today, but like I said, this has been something I wanted to talk about. On the next stream, I want to talk about, just kind of as a preview to join in next time, about right to repair and open closed source. I've had a few people ask me about my thoughts and opinions and where I stand on that, and suggestions that I would have for them. And so it's something that I feel like I should cover in a stream that is an interesting topic that a lot of people might find maybe not interesting, but will have opinions on. And I would love to hear those, and I'll share mine as well. So tune in for that. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate everybody that watches. Again, if you leave a comment, please don't delete the comment on YouTube. It might take me a while to get there, but I'll get to you and I'll answer it. I don't want anybody to feel bad. Don't delete your comments if I don't respond right away. So always great to hear from everybody. I hope everybody has an amazing rest of their day, and we'll check you next time on the stream.